Hi, my name is Robert Shelley with Chelle Law, and my law firm assists physicians with employment contract issues. Today, I'm going to talk about what should be in a telehealth contract, also known as telemedicine. Uh, the kind of pandemic accelerated telemedicine and telehealth across all specialties that's possible to be done via telemedicine. Most of the state licensing boards I would say, greatly increased the ability for physicians to, utilize telemedicine, whereas maybe in the past it was prohibited in some ways. So I find I have more and more people contacting me to review telehealth employment contracts or telehealth independent contractor agreements. And so there are some, things that need to be thought about before they're entered into by the physician. Now, there's really not a huge difference between a telehealth contract and just a normal employment contract. If, you were to join some kind of hospital network or a private physician-owned group, the agreements are going to be relatively the same, with one big exception. And this is kind of the reason why I wanted to talk about this today. In the normal agreement, you're going to have, and this goes for any kind of physician contract, you'll have the term, how long it lasts, how to terminate the contract, what the compensation is going to be, whether there are any benefits, what the employer is going to pay for, so licensing, DEA, societies, associations, continuing medical education, time off potentially, although it's a little different for most telehealth agreements. And then the big one is the non-compete. Now, I wish I had a bright line answer of, okay, well, this is how it works with telehealth agreements, but I don't. So first, non-competes, or at least non-compete law, is kind of probably one of the only things that really changes state to state. If you were to review a physician contract, nothing would be state specific for the most part. It's all the same. However, each state kind of views non-competes differently. So there are some states, very few of them, but there are some states that completely prohibit non-competes for employment contracts for physicians. So California, New Mexico, Massachusetts, and then there's kind of varying degrees of, what's considered a reasonable and enforceable non-compete based upon the state. Now, the tricky part with telemedicine or telehealth is how to determine, kind of where the non-compete applies to. So if you think of a normal non-compete, it's going to say, for this period of time after the contract terminates, usually 1 year, sometimes up to 2, the physician can't compete, can't either work within their specialty in a specific geographic area. So usually somewhere between 5 to 15 miles from their primary practice location. And that's simple. You just stick a pin in a map, put 15 miles around it, and then that's where the physician cannot work during the period of the non-compete. Well, that doesn't work in telehealth. So I find most physicians who are working in telehealth usually are licensed in multiple states. And so let's say they live in Florida, they're licensed in Florida, but then they're also licensed in Georgia and South Carolina. The telehealth company, services all of those states. And so the physician has kind of no say in where the patient is located. And then they're just, kind of seeing the patients that are in a queue. So different telehealth companies do it differently. Some, literally, the physician, when they're available or when they want to, they'll just log in. There's a queue of patients, and then they just, tee up whoever's available, and and do the consult or whatever they're doing. Others will have, like in maybe telepsych, they'll have a set patient base that they continuously see and write scripts for. So the difference between like a normal non-compete where it's just a region and a telehealth agreement is most of the telehealth agreements will state you cannot, compete with current patients or provide care to current patients, in the state that you're providing care for us, or you can't work for another telehealth company that competes in the state that we're currently in. They're much more broad and in my opinion, much likely more unenforceable versus kind of a standard 1 year, 10 to 15 miles. Now, these are just working their way through the court systems in various states. And some states, it's completely open as far as whether these are enforceable at all, or if there's some kind of way of making the non-compete enforceable by, limiting the area. But let's just give a couple scenarios. So let's say a physician is doing, radiology while living in Georgia, but then doing reads from multiple states nearby. And then the radiology company offers a non-compete that just states the physician can't work for any other competing radiology company where you're doing reads in different states, or you can't provide radiology services for any of the facilities that company is making, doing reads for over the last year or something like that. I mean, you can kind of see how complicated it can get. So like, let's say someone leaves the first job, they move to a second job. They have absolutely no control over which facilities they're providing care for or the patients that they're seeing or anything like that. And then maybe there's some kind of change in a business relationship down the road. And so, maybe in the first 6 months of the non-compete, there's no problems. And then in the second half, maybe your new company starts servicing the old organizations that your first radiology job were servicing. And then, so what do you have to do? Do you have to stop providing care for those places? Was there any caveat in the original non-compete that says if the contracts ended, that then the physician would be free to provide care to those facilities? Another one would be if it was just patient-based. So let's say it's telepsych, the telepsych company would say the physician can't provide care to any patient that receives services from the telepsych company within the last year, and not even specific to the physician, just any services from their company. Well, once again, let's say the physician leaves. They have no control over who the patients are that they see. They have no idea of who the previous companies were that the patients used. So how do you determine or track whether they're breaking the non-compete or not? And then another factor is, how is it even tracked? Like, how would an employer who made a physician sign a non-compete, how would they know if that physician is servicing patients in a new position? It's very difficult. So I wish I had an answer of yes, it's enforceable, or no, it's not. I don't. The courts have to kind of go through these scenarios and then make a decision on, all right, this is what would be considered enforceable and this is what would be considered not. Now, I think it makes sense for the physician to bring up these issues to their company prior to signing the non-compete and get into those scenarios and say, well, how am I supposed to know if our company provided care to someone and then I switched to a different company and it's a patient I never had, I had no relationship with, but they utilized another physician in the organization. It's just like, there's so many different complications when it comes to this. So probably would make sense to get it looked at prior to signing the non-compete. But my guess is there's going to be some limitations from what some of the bigger telehealth companies are making physicians sign right now. Putting a blanket, you can't work for another telehealth company in the entire state, I don't think that's going to hold up at all. It's going to have to be limited, most likely by geography in some way, which in these scenarios may just be impossible to do. So that's a brief breakdown of what should be in a telehealth contract, with like a huge focus on the non-compete, because that's the most important part. Anyway, hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, you can always contact my law firm at the phone number listed below in the description, or you can reach us through our website, ChelleLaw.com. That's CHELLE law.com. Appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.